Hello, Kootenai County. We are here today with one of your candidates for sheriff. I'm here with Justin Nagel. Welcome,
Thank
Justin.
you. Welcome.
I'm Elsa Owsley with Watchman Ministry North Idaho, and we wanted to do this interview to bring you all the candidates that are running for sheriff. And today we're going to be asking him a few questions. So we'll start with a simple question, Justin. Being a sheriff is not an easy job. So why are you running for sheriff?
A lot of reasons. Mainly, a major factor is that the community needs a leader that comes from the people. I'm a third-generation Idahoan. We have a few major problems with the leadership in the sheriff's office, nepotism, and some big corruption stuff. I don't think it can be solved by somebody else that's inside the circle. There's one major problem I have with the sheriff's office is the sheriff's office was meant to be someone from the people. Our average income here is $20,000 to $60,000 a year, and we pay the sheriff $150 plus. Of course, it goes up every year too. And I think the pay needs to be moved down to $50,000. So it's actually a representative of the people. I don't believe that somebody making 3 and 4 times the income of the people, it puts them more of in a king position instead of an average person position, just by breaking the social class. So that's one reason. I've had some conversations with Bob Norris in the past, and the things that should be important to us that he knew about, he's totally failed to act on. So that's basically unacceptable from a police officer, and from a politician. It really needs to move to the forefront that we shouldn't be putting up with that type of behavior from a politician in any position, period. The whole concept of politics and how it relates to the public needs change. The politicians need to understand that they are a public representative, and it's supposed to be a two-way conversation. And you are in private meetings and in a special position to protect the public interest. And we are Americans, and if you really look into like freedom of the press things and the responsibility of politicians, the number one person you're supposed to protect citizens from is a bad government, and then it moves into everything else. That's why the right of the press is number one and the right to bear arms is number two. Socially, I think that we have forgotten that, and we have the bad government that people ran away from. Then it's really sad because they came up here and expecting to get away from it and went in probably someplace worse. That's pretty much it. To expand on that a little bit, I guess. The sheriff's office has a 20 and 30-year history of not providing public records simply because they don't want to. And Bob Norris actually took those people under his wing, got an endorsement from one of them in the last campaign. And as an investigator, in an investigative technique, you would take somebody under your wing to find out all the bad things they're doing and then terminate their employment and fix the problems. And he didn't do that. He just he was quoted saying he found a new friend in our last undersheriff. Now, in that one act, you can tell that Bob Norris doesn't respect the public because you're not supposed to, as a uniformed officer, endorse anybody. It's against the policy. So he coerced that out of Dan Matos. Dan Matos did it. And when I'm talking about respect to the public, those are our rules. There's a major problem where they flat out don't respect the public, and it's blatantly obvious. They do it in public forums all the time. And you can't have people behave like that in light of day and have them be trusted behind closed doors. It's simply never happened in the past, and it'll never happen again. There's a hand in hand with that, with the public records, is a refusal to take complaints, lawful complaints, but yet an major expansion of authority by those people. So a few examples of not taking complaints, I had reported to Bob Norris about a dispatcher keeping 250 secret files on me. And I'm not trying to make this about me, but I'm a good example because I'm the person speaking up, and it happens to everybody. That's how I knew to look. And he knew about it going into the office. And when that event came up, instead of speaking up and doing something, he totally failed, and I went through the justice system. So, and then in that justice system, you have several more failures of judges. One major failure is the complainant against me falsified court documents, turned them into a police report. They took a complaint and a report and referred it to prosecution, knowing that the documents were falsified. The prosecution then used those documents, which is Adam Johnson, as prosecutor. The prosecutor at the time was Barry McHugh, who's now a judge, so that should be pretty terrifying to everybody. He then turned those documents in, and Adam Johnson used those documents to extend sentencing. In this case, was unsupervised probation. But that example right there are all in public records. We average people can't get something done. We can't even stop the behavior. It puts all of the burden is put onto us to hire a tort attorney to go after every single person in every single step, where we already pay them far more than we pay an average person to flat out ignore their job duties. I haven't added it up. I bet it was close to $750,000 a year we're paying them, and they blatantly just ignore what we tell them to do through our rules with the county commissioners. And there's another major one. Bob Norris and I didn't talk about this, but when I testified in the case I was just referencing, I testified to the premeditation of the upcoming, this was May 27th, 2022, to the upcoming Moscow murders that would happen in November. I had the date, the facility, and where to find the victims, and who they were going to arrest. I also testified to Kyle Fritz of Post Falls City Police Department stalking a juvenile. The juvenile's last name's Bowman. Where he was going to make a stop illegally, and the people at the Idaho State Patrol that were going to justify the stop. All of which happened. I informed Bob Norris of this, and Bob Norris at a public meeting out at Twinlow Village, and Bob said, okay, I'll look into it. That's important to understand. This meeting is one of his coffee with a cop meetings. And it's important to understand this. He's the only person on duty, and we can get that through an information request. So even though it was in public, the only officer there was Bob Norris, which eliminates any excuse that one of the other cops was supposed to take care of it. Because at that point in time, there wasn't one because they're not on duty. So that's all documented at the sheriff's office. We can't get a complaint filed against any of them. The Idaho State Patrol claimed that Fritz was on DUI emphasis, and Post Falls, his employer, states he wasn't on duty, and they never participated in the DUI task force. Lieutenant Ashby goes to the extent of sending me press files of what a great job the DUI task force was. So in writing, complaint has to be in writing, I filed the complaint process up to Major Dottie. I've never heard a word about it. So there's Major Dottie and Bob Norris that should be at least have an answer, an investigation conclusion. And we know that because Ashby formed an investigation conclusion by saying it was a DUI emphasis task force stop, which none of it was. Those are some. Those are major problems that are worse than generally anywhere else you're going to look. And we have a problem, going back to us, the community, that we blindly trust whoever tells us that we're right. So we have some. This is bad leadership. Maybe a little bit of the first question, a little bit of the second question. We shouldn't have politicians that run downtown Coeur d'Alene and encourage people to take their firearms down, claiming you're stopping Antifa, when you scheduled, you took a permit out for the gathering 60 and 90 days before the event. So when the public looks at that, we should say to the people who are taking credit for saving our lives and protecting the community, and say, how'd you file the permit early? Just a basic investigative stance. And we don't have that in the sheriff. He runs down and helps them out. So it's a 4-year fail. It's a fail at everything. You should not be encouraging people. You shouldn't be intentionally misleading people to get elected. I mean, that's simply a bad person. You can't have bad people with authority. So I guess in conclusion to your question, there are overwhelming numbers of reasons why lots of people should be running for the county sheriff position, and we need to get rid of bad government. We have it.
Okay. Your next question, what are your top 3 priorities for the sheriff's office should you be elected?
It's very simple. I don't think it takes 3, but the number one is putting citizens first, which is simply following the rules that we already have that aren't followed, which I discussed earlier with Dan Matos, and the examples are everywhere of that. Follow simple investigative procedure that we're supposed to be doing. Follow the laws and rules that we already have. If we look inside of certain police reports, one would be the drowning of Misty Phelps. The recovery officer claimed that she was wedged underneath the back seat, and that explains bruising on her legs. Well, through the police department and through the prosecutor's office, we know the bruises were made from somewhere else. But the officer took 2 weeks to write his police report. You can't take 2 weeks to write a police report and turn it in. It's end of shift. Maybe the next day, because we don't remember every little detail. That's why it's supposed to be done immediately. And he claimed he needed to do that because he had to seek counseling, medical assistance, trauma. Except when one of our employees, there are workers, has a medical claim, it's recorded on the insurance that we pay for. So we can go see if there's a claim filed when he's claiming he went down. There's no claim filed for him. So we know that one investigation was massively mishandled. Once again, you can't give people power that lie to you all the time. There are employees lying. So to this question, though, how do you handle that? If you had an employee anywhere and they blatantly lied to you, would you employ them for 5 or 10 more years? No, you'd fire them. We still employ them all. It's ridiculous. And that's putting citizens first. You can't let those people have, they have free cars and free guns and they can shoot you. But what the real problem is, they have authority. And we can't allow that. So you put citizens first. All we expect, anybody in this room, anybody that's going to watch this, is that their values reflect somewhat close to ours. Somewhat because we understand that we're all individuals. So putting citizens first is the number one thing. Those other things are implementing how to do that, which is termination of bad employees. Other employees don't want to work with them. Somehow they got power inside the PD, and we don't get rid of them. And a change of administration is one of the times when you can just call it restructuring and get rid of people. But it really is that simple. You got to be careful when people in positions of power try to make everything sound incredibly complicated, because then you naturally need them, or you need one of their friends to help you understand the simplest facts.
Okay, moving on to the next question. What are your thoughts on growth and how it will impact the sheriff's office over the next decade?
That's
And
great.
what long-term planning would you recommend?
Great question. I actually really enjoy this question because the problems with any of the growth in the pay structures comes from the past county commissioners and leads into the county commissioners we have now and the future county commissioners. We got a pipeline put through. We have three-phase power. What we were supposed to do was develop industry. Industry is what pays for law enforcement. So if we had a good economic plan through the 2000s, 2010s, and now the 2020s of growth, controlling the growth so that we have good industry jobs and then good housing after that and luxury housing after that, we wouldn't be in the position that we are now. And that's important to understand because this is a burden ball that politicians just keep pushing around, and the public needs to understand it's the county commissioners. It's also the county sheriffs that we've had in the past for not saying we should have been building industry. You can't, what we had people do in the past is replace officers with technicians because they were cheaper. That's not a good reason for people. The problem was we didn't build industry to support the officers we had and then bring the good officers up with us and get rid of the ones that fill their police reports out 2 weeks late because we need manpower. So we're in a desperate position, but it was caused by the last 20 years. We have to understand that because we can't carry that into the future. So the answer here is the public needs to become aware that when we have commissioners that we have had, they need to be encouraged that we want industry, I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, but lower income housing. We don't want it because it doesn't support an economy. But so the land that's left, we need to go to industry and start bringing in major industries. We still have some three-phase power and some pipeline left to build those, and that's what we need to do. So the community needs to urge that to the county commissioners. And back to this with the county commissioners and spending, and a recent topic, which is all the new cameras. I'm bringing this up because I've had leaders of city councils and people get a hold of me in the last 2 and 3 years and flat out say, and a lot of people that voted for Bob Norris and say, we don't trust Bob Norris anymore. And these are people that are funding the cameras, right? So when you want more cameras, this goes back to their actual role in government. If they don't want to defend people first, then we need to fire them all. And this is a good example. This is my true opinion about this. A lot of people in government don't trust Bob Norris because they think he lies. And this is on our county commissioners. He goes in and asks for more money to have cameras. The community speaks up and says, we don't want them because we think we're going to misuse them. You're going to misuse them. He promises on the honor of the sheriff's office, which shouldn't be very high, which all of our county commissioners should know, that the status of our sheriff's office is not good, the reputation. And they all approve it. Right there, that tells us we should go to the county commissioners and say, we're going to fire all of you next election. We don't care what you've done in the past. You don't give more authority to people you don't trust. We spoke up and said we don't trust them not to do this, and behind the scenes, you don't trust them, but you still gave them more money for cameras. You're all fired. I don't care what you've done in the past, and the next people that come in, if they want to behave that way, fire them too. It might take 2 or 3 cycles, but they'll learn to stop lying to us and stand up for themselves. That's a big problem. This is an old school mob saying, if people aren't going to stand up for themselves, they're not going to stand up for you. And you got to be able to navigate those different points of view. But that's all the commissioners. How that carries on to the future, we have to get the commissioners to bring in industry. The fact is that the money set aside for the sheriff's office will continue to go up because it goes up by federal and state law. So the big one here is get good people in the police department, turn back to community policing. One of my major ideas is everybody talks about the reserve deputy program and community policing. It's not that you can't do it, it's that it's more expensive. So the solution to that is, the fact is they never wanted to. It is more expensive. It's business taxes. So you need to be able to go to the businesses that support that and say, we're in a problem. We have a problem. We need a reserve deputy program. It's going to increase taxes because we have to pay for more deputies. But the reserve deputy program is better because you get citizens involved. You spread the involvement out over a greater base of people instead of just hiring more of a special class. No, they have a higher income class. They have different classes. It's different classes of people. And then we have a habit of hiring people's families, which we also have to stop doing. The business owners, so you have to be part salesman, I guess what I'm saying, is you have to be able to sell that idea to the people paying for it, which is the business class. If they don't want to listen to it, you can go to the public and go, I tried to sell this idea, do we want it or not? Because we can just force it on them. But it's better to have the community involved in their own decisions, whether it's, and people need to understand where to spend their money. If they're spending their money in a business that doesn't support their ideas, then spend your money somewhere else. And tell them that. We don't agree with your politics. That's what we're supposed to be doing in capitalism. Is if you look back in history of North Idaho, the businesses built the roads and schools and all those things. And if they didn't support the community, nobody worked for them. And you have less government doing it that way. So the solution, to back up a little bit, sorry, is we need to get the commissioners to do what they're supposed to be doing. We need the public to talk to the commissioners. And we're going to end up, if we don't spread the base out, you're going to end up having to raise taxes and get officers. But hopefully it's through a reserve deputy program.
Sounds good. Okay, your next question. What are the strongest qualities you possess, and how do you feel it will benefit the sheriff's office, the department, and the citizens of Kootenai County?
That's also a great question. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think independence and being an independent. I know a lot of people in our police departments. I wouldn't treat them any differently than anybody else, and they're the type of people that treat everybody the same. So there's no favoritism there, and most of them work for a different department from the sheriff's office. But being an independent thinker, and I've done other things in my life. I've private investigated for 26 years. Which is how I gained knowledge of other events I spoke about earlier. You realize that it's a pattern that's repeating itself. So general knowledge of the area, of conditions in our area that can create bad events. It's hard to describe, but without going into great detail. But it's knowledge of where the sheriff's office came from, where our law enforcement offices came from, and what we don't want them to do into the future. And going back on that, we have all the rules we should be following. There are some major problems where we change state laws and post certifications, post laws and things like that. But you're supposed to implement a policy, because the sheriff's the head policy maker, not the top cop, that's the undersheriff, to regulate those things and tame everybody down to our community where how we're supposed to handle ourselves in uniform.
Great. Okay. And then lastly, we want to give you an opportunity to just make a closing statement, whatever you want to cover that you think is relevant and the public needs to hear.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I know this is hard to swallow, but I knew to testify back in May, which isn't the first one I've done. Flat out what it is I knew about the upcoming Moscow murders because our police departments are basically organized crime, a large portion of them. They're right in the pyramid scheme with everybody else. I knew to tell Bob Norris about the upcoming events with the dispatcher because they're organized crime. They use their position to target people. They're criminals. They're organized crime, and it is a coordinated attack on people. I know that's hard for people to hear, but I can't time travel at the same time. So I need to back up a little bit and point out that the testimony that I gave has since, it never made it to the FTR recording system. But, so that could scale things up to be dealing with a domestic terrorist group when you alter court records and then place them on there. But the people that were in court, which is of course the jury, judge, two bailiffs, 3 attorneys and 2 court clerks have talked about it. So the information has got out, but we have an absolutely broke justice system with judges showing. We have another judge. I guess that's the conclusion of it. But it's flat out organized crime. And people need to understand what the definition of that really is. And we have all the things like the trafficking of people. You can't, in every county around us, you can't deny it. So it's flat out organized crime, and the community needs to step up and take back their police departments and their public officials.
Okay, anything else you want to add?
I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.